Welcome, everyone, to this fabulous session about crafting an effective resume, tips and best practices being presented by Honeywell, and our speaker is Mario Hidalgo. So we will first start with doing the speaker introduction. Then we will tell you a little bit about our upcoming events. And then I will leave you with Mario Hidalgo to do his presentation, and then we'll have a Q&A. However, if you do have a question during his presentation, we encourage you to put your so we can address it at the time that you have that question. Oops. Oops. This is way faster than I do. So we want to welcome Mario Hidalgo, who is an experienced lead designer of gas turbine engines with over 27 years at Honeywell Aerospace in Phoenix, Arizona, in roles of increasing responsibility, where he is currently a principal design engineer in the Engines and Power Systems division. He has led teams of domestic and global designers on two large APU engine core designs, and prior to that was design module lead for several advanced technology engines. He's also the team leader for the mechanical design model-based enterprise team tasked with advancing model-based design efforts on the mechanical side of Honeywell Aerospace. A native of San Juan, Puerto Rico, Mario is an ASME geometric dimensioning and tolerancing senior level certified, a SHIP lifetime member, and has been involved with SHIP for the past 31 years. He has a mechanical engineering degree from Carnegie Mellon University, where he was one of the founding members of the SHIP student chapter, and an MBA from Arizona State University. So we want to remind you all that we have tomorrow another session starting at 9, is building your network and elevator pitch skills. And also don't forget to register for our national convention, which is in Salt Lake City, Utah, from November 1st to the 5th. And registration is currently open, so please don't hesitate. At the end of the session, I will show this again so that you can give us some feedback. And please, I urge you to stay till the end to give us some feedback about this fabulous session so you can get great prizes. And last but not least, I want to thank you for joining us. And now I leave you with Mario Hidalgo.
Thank you, Ana. Let me share my screen here. All right, can you see that okay?
We can see it.
You can see it, all right, perfect. All right, well, thank you, Ana, for a nice introduction, and welcome everybody to today's SHIP Latin X Factor webinar about resume best practices. I'm glad you could all make it. As a SHIP lifetime member and a big believer in SHIP's mission and purpose, I'm excited and honored to be presenting to this nationwide SHIP audience. And I hope you find this material helpful as you're preparing for the upcoming national convention in Salt Lake City. So that was a nice introduction. Let me tell you a little bit about myself before we get started. So like Ana said, I'm from San Juan, Puerto Rico. I attended Carnegie Mellon University many years ago. I have an MBA from Arizona State. I've been a lifetime member of SHIP since 2008. But I've been involved for 31 years, all the way back to my freshman year in college in 1992, 93, where I was one of the founding members of the SHIP CMU student chapter. I've been to 15 SHIP national conferences, so this upcoming one will be my 16th. And I was actually recruited by Honeywell. It was Allied Signal at the time, at the 1996 SHIP National Technical and Career Conference in Seattle. So I've been involved with SHIP for many years, and I'm a SHIP success story, so I owe a lot to SHIP. So once I got hired by Allied Signal, now Honeywell, I've been there since 1996, all in the Engines and Power Systems division in Phoenix, Arizona. So my current title is I'm a principal design engineer within the engine design and installations department. The two biggest programs that I've gotten to work on were large auxiliary power unit programs. So the first one was the HGT 1700 APU that goes in the Airbus A350 XWB aircraft. That aircraft has the distinction of having the longest current commercial flight out there right now. It's about a 19-hour flight from Singapore to New York. I also worked on the 331-500 B2 APU. I was the lead designer for that one. And that one goes in the Boeing 777X, which is currently in practice. I'm also the team leader for the mechanical design model-based enterprise team. So there, what we're trying to accomplish is all the design definition that would normally go on a drawing. We're trying to put it within our solid models in NX and some derivative neutral formats to increase the downstream automation or interoperability of those models to get some automation savings out of them. So that's what I do. All right, so why do I care so much about resumes and why should you listen to my advice today? So I've been recruiting for Honeywell for about 25 years, mostly through SHIP, but also through other channels. During that time, I've reviewed hundreds, if not thousands of resumes. I volunteer very frequently for resume review events mostly at Arizona State University, also through SHIP conferences. I stay very up to date on career coaching advice on LinkedIn and other sources. I don't follow a ton of people on LinkedIn, but I would say probably 2/3 of the people I follow are career coaches. So a lot of the stuff that comes up on my feed is advice about resumes and interviewing and all kinds of good career advice. So I stay pretty up to date on that. The vast majority of the resumes that I look at, during recruitment events, resume reviews, the vast majority could be improved in some way. And then finally, I just like, I like giving back. At one point I was in your shoes in college. I wish I could have had the resume help that I'm giving out today. So it just feels good to give back. And lastly, for me, looking at resumes, it's fun. It doesn't feel like work. It's just something that I enjoy doing. And I'm passionate about good looking resumes. So to me, it's a fun activity. So, all right. So the agenda. So we did the introduction. Excuse me. We're going to go through a brief Honeywell overview. Then we'll get into the good stuff, the purpose of resume, elements of good and bad resumes. We'll spend some time talking about the profile objective or summary. Then we'll close out with 7 powerful resume hints, and then if all goes well, we should have about 10 minutes at the end for questions. So let me give you a quick overview of Honeywell. So Honeywell has 4 major business units. We have aerospace is the biggest unit, where our products include propulsion engines, auxiliary power units, wheels and brakes, urban air mobility solutions, avionics, cockpit and space systems, and connectivity solutions. We have Honeywell Building Technologies, where we offer fire and life safety solutions, in addition to building management systems, and they're featured in over 10 million buildings worldwide. We have Performance Materials and Technologies, where we produce specialty chemicals, absorbents, refrigerants, and cut-resistant fibers, among other products. And then finally, we have Safety and Productivity Solutions, where we improve worker safety and productivity with sensing technologies, handheld scanners, personal protective equipment, and automated material handling systems. So we do have a 5th business unit, which connects the other 4 through software. That's Honeywell Connected Enterprise. So Honeywell wants to be the world's top software industrial company. We want to bring the physical and digital worlds together by connecting aircraft, vehicles, buildings, businesses, homes, and people. So we're a well-diversified Fortune 500 company. We're based in Charlotte, North Carolina. We have about 97,000 employees worldwide across 700 plus sites, 82 countries. We're one of the 30 companies in the Dow Jones Industrial Average. So the next couple of slides will give you a general idea of the relative size and impact of each business unit in terms of sales. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail on them, but I'll just point out that aerospace and performance materials and technologies, they have about the same. They had about the same amount of sales in 2022, roughly about $11 billion. That was followed by safety and productivity solutions, had about $7 billion. And finally, building technologies at about $6 billion. So we're a well-diversified, we have a well-diversified portfolio position for sustainable growth. All right, so now let's get into the good stuff. So what is the purpose of a resume? So in essence, a resume is a personal marketing document. It's a way to introduce yourself to a prospective employer. And for that employer, many times when they see your resume, it precedes a face-to-face meeting with you or even a phone call. So it's the first impression that they get of you. So really the purpose of a resume, it helps you get noticed by a recruiter or by a company so you can get interviewed and hopefully hired. That's your ultimate goal, to get a job or a full-time job or an internship with a company. So that's the purpose of a resume. So a resume summarizes a few things in one page. So who you are, your name, how to contact you, what you're looking for, and what interests you. It summarizes your skills and qualifications. So your education, work experience, and then any technical, leadership, or teamwork experience. And those three, they're all, they're skills that convey to a real life work environment. You acquire them in school, but there's a direct correlation between those skills and how you can apply them in the workplace. So these last three bullets here, implicitly, even though these are not directly in your resume, the way you format your resume, the content you have, your grammar, they convey your professionalism, your attention to detail, and your communication skills. All that can be perceived or extracted by the recruiter from your resume. One thing I want to point out here is that multiple surveys have shown that you have about 6 seconds to make a good first impression with a recruiter. Once they take that first look at your resume, that first impression, it only takes about 6 seconds to make. And having recruited for many years, I can tell you that number is not that far off. That's about how long you have to make a good first impression. So you're formatting, how that visual impact to the human that's looking at it. It's very important for them to spend more than those initial 6 seconds on it. So all right. So I'm gonna spend some time here talking about elements of a good resume and things that you should not do on a resume. So let's start with the good ones. So what should you do on your resume? So first of all, you want to have your name at the top in a slightly larger font size than the rest of the text, just to stand out a little bit. Contact information, that should be right below your name. So at a minimum, you need a cell phone and an email address. And please make sure your email address is professional or at least neutral sounding. You don't want your email to be something like, slacker420@yahoo.com. And that's for multiple reasons. Besides the fact that slacker420 is a terrible choice for username. The domain name where your email is hosted can work against you. Domains like Yahoo, AOL, for those of you that remember AOL, it still exists, Hotmail, mail.com. All those are older email domains. And if you use them, you could be perceived as not being technologically savvy or not being up to date on the latest technology. So stick to something neutral. Use your school domain or use something like Gmail. that's neutral. So and modern, current. So that is important. The summary, profile, or objective, that's important at the college level. Mainly, I will spend some time talking more about that in a couple of slides here. Your education. So here you want to include college name, location, your major, expected graduation date, and your GPA. The GPA is important. Many students omit their GPA, but if you omit it, recruiters may assume that it's under 3.0 if you don't list it. So, we don't care if it's 3.02 or 3.92. If it's above 3.0, definitely include it. And, as students, work really hard to keep that GPA above 3. Some companies use that as a screening criteria, so it's important to keep the GPA high, but at the same time, having a 4.0 doesn't guarantee you anything. So, try to keep it above 3, but balance yourself by having good, activities and leadership experience. Work experience should be on your resume. As engineering recruiters, we love to see engineering internships on a resume, but do list any paid employment. If you worked at Target or Starbucks or, anything where you work with others, where you can show teamwork, that's all great. That's all great content. Technical experience. So anything within a class, a class team project, any teams, extracurricular teams, clubs, anything of a technical nature, Formula SAE, Rocket Club, whatever your school offers. Anything where you did a technical task, that's good content to have in there. Leadership experience, and again, this is where SHIP comes into play. So any leadership involvement with SHIP, SWE, NSBE, any other school organizations, fraternities, sororities, there are other school clubs, church or community groups. So anything where you can show leadership, that's all really good content to have. If you're going to an in-person career fair, still try to print it on nice paper. That's still relevant. Try, it doesn't have to be super fancy, but it should be something slightly fancier than just plain white copy paper. And then finally, when you upload your resume to an employer's website, or whether you're like this, like we're trying to get you to pre-register for the SHIP conference, or whether you're applying to an online job posting, please use PDF format instead of Microsoft Word, and I'll tell you why. So if you use Microsoft Word, you've created a really nice resume in some fancy font, and it looks beautiful on your screen. It's nicely formatted. It's one page. You have great margins, but you picked kind of a weird font, and it's a professional font, but it's still an odd font that not many people have. So on your computer, it looks just fine. You upload somewhere, a recruiter downloads it and opens it on their computer. Their computer doesn't have that font. So Word is going to pick the next closest font, or its default font. So your nicely formatted resume now looks like a mess. Things are carrying over. It's more than one page. Your margins are all messed up. So the way you avoid that is by using PDF. When you create a PDF, what you see as the creator is the same thing that the recipient sees as the recipient. There's no that same issue about the fonts carrying over. Doesn't happen. So you're protecting your creation by using PDF. You're guaranteed that the recipient will see it, and will see the same product that you created. I also recommend that you include your name as part of the PDF file name. So doing first name _ last name _ 2023 _ resume. That's a great file name. I'll tell you, as recruiters, if we download your resume from a portal or somewhere, and the file name does not include your name, one of the first things we're going to do is rename it with your name. So we, at a glance, we know whose resume we're looking at. So save those few extra steps and please name it with, or include your name as part of the file name. So, all right. So those are the good things to do. Let's talk about what not to do on a resume. So I think the biggest sin I've seen on a resume is not including their name. And I've only seen this a couple times. I admit it's pretty rare, but it's pretty weird to get a resume and not having the candidate's name on it. And I have to assume that happened because either the candidate assumed that the file name had their name, or that it was part of an online job application where they had to, type in all their information. But unfortunately, what reached me was simply a resume with no name. So I didn't know who I was evaluating. So again, it's a silly one. Please always put your name at the top. Making it longer than one page. So as you get experience, after you've been working for a few years, at that point you can probably justify going over one page. But still, I mean, at the college level, please keep it to one page. I mean, anything longer than that, you're including information that you don't need to have in there. You can really fit it into one. Even mine, after 27 years of working, I still fit it in all in one page. So it's doable. Longer resumes are harder for recruiters to manage, to read, to handle. So please keep it to one page. Having spelling and grammar errors. So I do see this from time to time. It really shouldn't happen as much with having the Microsoft Word spell checker. So spelling errors should be rare. We still do see them. Grammar errors are more common. Everybody please mute if you can. So grammar errors, I mean, Microsoft Word doesn't do a great job always in the grammar. What I recommend there is have peers review your resume, go to resume review events, to your career center, whatever. The more eyes you can get in your resume, the more polished it'll end up being. So that's how you get around some of the grammar issues. Don't list your full postal address. That's kind of an obsolete thing. City and state is all that's expected nowadays. And on top of that, listing your full address could be a privacy issue in today's world. So don't list your full address. Just put city and state. High school information. So those of you earlier in your college careers, you may be struggling for content. You may be tempted to put your high school information. I mean, it's okay if you have no better content to list, but really, as corporate recruiters, we tend to start looking at your experience after you start college. One thing that I would recommend, if you have any significant leadership or technical activities while in high school, to include those, but I mean, they have to be pretty high level. I mean, at the level of Eagle Scout. If you took flight lessons, that at that level, that's a-okay to include. But just putting where you graduated from high school, that's not it's not significant enough to list, in my opinion. Using a non-customized personal LinkedIn link, and I see this all the time, and it's so easy to fix. That your LinkedIn link is not customized because when you look at it in your profile, it'll be something like, your name, like Mario Hidalgo, followed by like a string of 10 alphanumeric characters that LinkedIn randomly picked for you. Luckily, that's super easy to fix. Just go into your profile, to your personal URL. It'll list it. It'll let you customize it. Unless you have a very common name, you can probably come up with one that no one else has used. Like, for example, mine is just Mario Hidalgo. So I just use my middle initial, and nobody had picked that one. If you have a more common name, you might need to include, like a number at the end, like 4 or 25, something short. You don't need that 10-digit string. So again, that's super easy to fix. You look smarter by customizing your link. So again, super, super easy to fix. Don't use any paid, purchased templates from, places like Etsy, Canva. I mean, there are others out there. It's a waste of money. Keep it simple. Those fancy templates are often created by graphic artists, not necessarily people that are familiar with, recruitment, with the software used for recruitment and, other things. So they may look really fancy, but, in reality, it may actually work against you. Some of those fancy templates, they end up having different font colors, multi-column formats. Definitely not recommended. So simpler is better. Using your picture, again, this is not recommended on a resume. Save your picture for LinkedIn. If you put the picture in your resume, you could be introducing biases into the hiring process, based on how you look. Somebody might, look at you and make some assumption about your skills or your abilities, when that shouldn't be part of the recruitment process. It should be all about your education, your skills. So again, don't put your picture on your resume. Making poor use of margin. So, this goes into having too big of margin, a small margin at the top, huge margin at the bottom, pushing the margins where you have almost no margin. So, make it visually pleasing. And later on, I have a good example about that. Using a font size that's too small. This does happen as people try to cram more material in there. They sometimes they get into a font size that's too small. I can't give you a rule of thumb saying, don't use anything smaller than 11 point or 12 point or 10 point. This really varies from font to font. What looks good on, at 12 point on one font will be too small in another font. So if it looks too small to you, it's probably too small. And then finally, highlighting keywords throughout the resume. And I don't see this very often in domestic resumes. I see it more often in international resumes. And I'll give an example. Somebody will say, used ANSYS to analyze, 20 solid models, and they'll make ANSYS bold. And problem is, they do this in like every single line in the resume. They find a word to make bold, and to me that's very distracting. I think that works against you. It makes it harder to read the resume. So highlighting, being consistent about highlighting headings and such, that's totally fine. But highlighting random words on every single line, that to me that's distracting. So I would say don't do that. All right, so optional items. So the LinkedIn link, I talked about in a couple slides ago about how to customize the link. So if you decide to include it, definitely customize it. But whether to include the link or not, that's the bigger question. So at the college level, I only recommend that students include their LinkedIn link if they have links to other content. So hyperlinks to papers, presentations, anything that you can't fit into a one-page resume. If what you have in LinkedIn is simply a digital copy of what's in your paper resume, it's really not adding a lot of value. I'll tell you as a recruiter, even on the ones that include a LinkedIn page, probably 9 out of 10 times I don't follow that link. So the value is limited. But if you're if you're a graduate student and you have a lot of papers, publications, presentations, you name it, that's hard to fit on a one-page resume. So at that point, do include your link and make sure that your LinkedIn is up to date. You have links to everything. So if the recruiter wants to get more details about what you've done in your school, projects and such, that they have access to that information. Hobbies and interests, that's another section that some people like to include them, some people don't include them. I only recommend including it if you have the space to give without sacrificing better content or readability. So don't squish everything in and make it 8-point font just to include it. At that point it'll be very hard to read. But if you have the space, if you're struggling for content, by all means you can include it. I would say don't include any polarizing information, anything that could get you screened because of an unfriendly reviewer. So, political affiliation tends to be a hot, button topic right now. So I would say don't include that on your resume. If you can somehow link your hobbies and interests to your career goal. So for example, if you scuba dive and you want to be a marine scientist, that's a pretty close correlation there. So that's a good reason to include scuba diving as one of your hobbies and interests. So if you can make a similar correlation, that's a good reason to include them. Or if you know something about the recruiter, your interviewer, that would give you something in common to talk about. So if you know who you're interviewing with, and they're, for example, they used to be a professional tennis player, and you play tennis in college, you could include that you play tennis. That will give you something in common to talk about. That's a harder one because many times you don't know who's going to look at your resume. You don't know who you're interviewing with. So, I mean, that was a little bit of a stretch, but still, that could be a reason to include it. A list of skills or classes taken, and I see this on many resumes. And unfortunately, from our standpoint, the value of that is limited because we don't know the proficiency level. Let's say somebody lists, NX and ANSYS as, software that they know. Are they a beginner? Did they launch it once and they know how to spell it, or are they an expert on it? That proficiency level is unknown from our recruiter standpoint. So it helps if you can give a little more context than just listing, a string of software programs. And again, the list of classes, again, that doesn't add a lot of value from our standpoint. I would rather see a list of something that you're really good at using, and give some context. If you have any certifications, any kind of higher level skill like that, definitely do list that. That same list of classes or skills, that could be a space filler that you later remove when you have better content. Proficiency in Microsoft Office tools, I mean, that's assumed at this point. You don't need to list it. So, I mean, Word, Excel, and PowerPoint, we assume that you use those in college, and that you know at least the basics often, so you don't need to list that. But again, any special certifications, like if you have Six Sigma experience, Six Sigma Green Belt, if you're like an Excel master, I know there's some special certifications through Microsoft or other entities for their programs. So if you have that, do include that. And for us in SHIP, fluency in foreign languages. Many of us speak 2 languages. I've run into many candidates that speak, 3, 4, 5 languages. So always include that. That could definitely help you in the recruitment process. All right, so let's spend a few minutes here talking about the profile, objective, or summary. So I don't care if you call it a profile, an objective, or a summary, but please do have one. It should be near the top of your resume, right after your name and the contact info. To me, it's most important at the college level, especially during career fairs when recruiters are looking at a lot of candidates and we want to learn as much about you as quickly as possible. I will say that summary or profile are the preferred headings. Some people out there feel that objective is outdated, and that's because they, after really more after you get some experience, it's more about showcasing how you can help a company achieve its goals than what you're personally looking for. But at the college level, to me, it's important for you as a student to tell us what you're looking for. And I'll give you a couple examples. And the issue is that what you're looking for, it may not be obvious to us as recruiters. So let's say that you're a senior, you're planning on going straight to grad school, and you have no objective statement on your resume. A recruiter gets a resume and they have to assume that that candidate is looking for a full-time job because they're about to graduate, when in reality, they're looking for a summer internship. So how do you fix that? You put an objective statement saying that you're looking for an internship. Another time, and this happened, I don't know, 5-6 years ago at the SHIP conference. I had an intern candidate who had fantastic hands-on skills. I mean, he had been a mechanic at one point. I mean, he was involved in like Formula SAE. I mean, he had some really good hands-on experience. So I would have assumed that he wanted to be a lab or a test engineer because those are very hands-on positions. But in the objective statement, it said he wanted to work on finite element analysis. Looking at his resume, he had no finite element analysis experience. He wanted to acquire that as part of the internship. So I would have never guessed by looking at his experience and qualifications that he wanted to work on finite element analysis. So there you go. That's two good examples of why to always have an objective statement. So why is it needed? So it helps us recruiters quickly learn 4 key things about you. And this is kind of like a objective statement builder here. So we learn, you have to say who you are. So you're a junior in mechanical engineering. What you're looking for a summer internship in aerospace or automotive. Why are you looking for it? Well, you're trying to further develop your finite element analysis skills. And what's your value to the employer, where you can apply your existing knowledge of ANSYS and NASRAM. And like I said, you want to have that in there because what you're looking for may not be obvious to us. So as you're building your profile objective or summary, there are good and bad ways to go about it. So you can end up with one that's too short. You can just say looking for a mechanical engineering internship. I do see those out there. I mean, you tried, but it's too short. You're not giving me enough information. It could be too vague, and I've seen this too. Somebody can say looking for an internship where I can make a difference, work as part of a team, learn new skills, and feel like my work is appreciated. That's all fine and great, but we all want that. You didn't tell me anything specific enough for me to help you, to direct you to the right recruiter, to the right, business unit. So it needs to be more specific than that. You can go the other end of the spectrum and be too specific. You can say you're a mechanical engineering junior seeking an internship in automotive crash testing. You're really limiting your options if you make it that specific. And you could have different resumes for different companies. If you give this to an aerospace company, they'll be like, okay, well, he wants automotive, so why would I consider this candidate? So, but if you have different versions, then you have a lot of versions to manage at the same time. So how you get around that is, you make a broader objective statement. So look at this one: mechanical engineering junior with previous internship and team project experience in manufacturing component analysis, seeking summer 2024 internship in the automotive industry in the areas of design, project management, or testing. That's a beautiful profile or summary or objective. It's the right length. It should only be 2 or 3 lines. If you go beyond 3 lines, it's too much information. Work on rewording it. You've told me who you are, what you're looking for, what your previous experience is, and you gave yourself lots of options as to where that recruiter can place you. if they're looking for the right position for you. So again, please always have that summary, profile, or objective. It'll definitely help you. All right, so now let's go into the 7 powerful resume hints. And so number 1 is the power of action verbs. So take a look at these groups of 3 statements and think about which one sounds more powerful. So you can say, I was part of a team that measured weights, capacitor technology research aimed at minimizing power consumption, or use SolidWorks at a proficient level to create 3D models. Okay, they're okay. Or you could say, I measured and documented the weights of servo engine components, I researched capacitor technology, and I created 3D solid models using SolidWorks. So these last 3 sound a lot more powerful. They sound like you did a lot more. So always start your bullet points with powerful action verbs. And just because a verb, it's an action verb, there are weak and strong action verbs. So avoid weak action verbs. So things like used, attended, tried, worked on, assisted. Those are weak verbs, so avoid those. Go with stronger verbs like designed, analyzed, measured, led, created. Those are all great action verbs. So always start your bullet points with good, strong action verbs. All right. The second one is the power of quantifying. So anytime you have a measurable accomplishment, it'll look more powerful than a vague accomplishment. So again, look at these groups of 3 statements. In the first ones, you have action verbs, but you haven't really quantified, what you did, what you created, how you made things better. In these bottom 3 statements, you're saying the same thing, but you're quantifying. You reduce testing lead time by 60%. You increase first batch yield by 15%. You increase cell production by 8%. You save 5% cost and 25 labor hours per unit through the implementation of something. So always focus on accomplishments, not on responsibilities. Anytime that you can put numbers and metrics in your bullet points, it's going to draw more attention than a vague accomplishment with no metric. So even if the number is not very impressive, just by having a number, a percentage, a number of hours, it'll feel like you did more than if you didn't quantify it. All right, number 3 is the power of leadership. So SHIP really has, it has a big role to play in here, because I see this all the time in the resumes we see through SHIP. So think of your role within your student chapter or your role within SHIP. So are you an attending member or are you an involved member? Are you just showing up to the meetings, or are you involved at a deeper level and making things happen? So again, look at these 3 statements and think of who did more. If I see on a resume that somebody is a member of SHIP, member of SWE, member of Formula SA team, or I see these 3 bullet points at the bottom. So I'm not going to read them. They're long, but you get the idea. These candidates, they're involved in the executive board. They're making things happen. They're quantifying. They have metrics. Going back to my last point about quantifying. They're saying how they got involved and how their leadership led to improvements for their chapter, for their club. So always try to get involved in activities where you can showcase your teamwork or your leadership skills. That's very, very important. And just from experience from so many years in SHIP, I can tell you that SHIP is an organization that you get as much out of it as you put into it. If you only showing up to the meetings and not doing a lot more than that, you're not going to get a lot out of it. But the more involved you get, the more you're going to get out of it. And pretty much everybody I talked to at SHIP that's had success, thank you, or thanks to SHIP, that's one thing they have to say. So definitely get involved. All right, number 4 is the power of consistency. So look at this sample resume here on the right, and I trimmed the bottom to make it readable. But so it's not a fancy resume, it's pretty simple, but it is incredibly consistent. So they've used the same font throughout, same spacing between the major sections, same vertical spacing between the headings and the start of the content. Same system used to define multiple items within the same category, same margins on all four sides. And again, I trimmed the bottom to make it readable. All the bullets are aligned. What's bold is consistent. What's italicized is consistent. What's bold and italicized is consistent. So again, be consistent. Don't give a recruiter an easy reason to screen you out because of inconsistencies. Things misaligned. Using different fonts. I do see that. I do see some messy resumes out there. But even if your content is simple, that be consistent. It really will make you look better. Right, number 5 is the power of visual appeal. So, and again, don't try to read these. These are blurred on purpose. I want you to focus on the overall visual impression instead of the content. So, a resume has to be visually appealing to a human reviewer with a balanced amount of white space. So, your goal is to not underwhelm or overwhelm that human reviewer. So, this resume on the left, it's underwhelming. There's not enough content. I mean, there's a huge gap at the bottom. I mean, everything listed is really short. There's no details. There has to be more to this candidate. So this underwhelms me as a recruiter. You could go to the other end of the spectrum and have too much content. So this middle resume, they have basically no margins. They have this really long paragraph. I mean, that's hard to read. Again, there's just way too much information on this resume. This is, to me, if I see this, my first response is I'm overwhelmed by it. Or you could be just right. This one on the right, this is great format. You have a good balance of content and white space. You have what looks like a good, correct length summary statement. Good, nice sections. Balanced margins on all four sides. So this is visually appealing. I see this resume and I want to read it. So make it appealing to a human reviewer. Don't underwhelm or overwhelm. All right, number 6 is the power of space. So every single line in your resume has a purpose. So as you're, right now you're in college, you may be struggling for content, and that's fine. But as your experience grows, you want to list more things, you have better content. You're going to start getting into a battle for space where individual line items are competing against each other for importance, for relevance. And you start thinking, okay, does this, bullet in this one section matter more than this other bullet in another section? And you will get to that point. Believe me, you'll get to that point pretty quickly. So things should drop off when more important content develops over time. So prime candidates for dropping off when you get better content, as you get internships, as you do research, as you have more leadership experience. So high school information, high school activities, hobbies or interests, that list of skills or classes taken with no context that I talked about earlier. Some students have a really long employment list. So at that point, be selective about which ones to list. List the more technical ones. You can list the most recent ones. You can list the ones where you have the best teamwork. You have to be selective at that point if space is an issue. Any class projects that you're listing that don't add much in terms of technical skills, teamwork or leadership, those could drop off as you get better content. And this last point here, I mean, this is a personal pet peeve of mine. I mean, as I review resumes and students are struggling with space, trying to fit it into one page, I see that in their bullet points, they're carrying over a bullet point for like 1 or 2 words. And to me, that's a waste of space. Those could easily be reworded to keep them to one line. Or if you're committed to using the 2 lines, then explain, quantify, use more of that second line to make that second line worthwhile. But otherwise, if you're only using that second line for 1 or 2 words, that's a waste of space. That's a prime candidate for rewording and gaining an extra line that you could use for better content. So anyway, the bottom line is be stingy with space. Eventually, you're going to need all the space you can get. All right, and the last powerful hint here is the power of fonts. So, and this is a pretty powerful one. Microsoft Word defaults to Calibri or Times New Roman as the default fonts, but I'm going to challenge you to be different. And using a different font can help you stand out and look sophisticated. And let me give you an example of why using a standard font could be a problem. So let's say that your university has a really nice sample resume template that they make available to the students for downloading. It's got all the right sections, it's got all the right content, but it's in one of these default fonts. And many students will take that template. They're simply going to replace the placeholders with their own information. Problem with that is that you end up with dozens, if not hundreds, of students at the same school with very similar looking resumes. So a recruiter that's going to the career fair at that school, they're going to see a lot of repetition. And it's very hard for students to stand out in that case. So that's why it's a smart move to use a different font than what everybody else is using. If you take that same resume, that same kind of canned resume to a national career fair, like a SHIP national conference, it's not as much of a big deal because you get more variety. It's a bigger pool of candidates, so it's unlikely that the same recruiter is going to see multiple resumes from the same school, looking in the same format. But again, I challenge you to try to be different in that regard. So fonts can be powerful because, in addition to making you look sophisticated, they can help or hurt your space issues. So just by changing the font, your resume could shrink or expand up to about 25%. So let's say that you're, just short, you need like an inch more of content, but you can't think of anything else to include, or on the other end of the spectrum, you're at like a page and an inch or an inch and a quarter of material, and you can't think of what else to trim. So this is a super simple thing to do. Just do select all on Word, change the font, and see what happens. And in some cases, like I said, depending on the font, it'll shrink. In some cases, it'll expand. But it could be a really easy way to solve your space issues. There are many professional looking fonts, both sans serif and serif. So these are some recommended ones. By no means is this an all-inclusive list. So you see their names here and like a sample sentence in that font. I will say that these are all 12-point fonts, so you get an idea here of why I couldn't tell you earlier not to go under a certain point size for the font, because you see here like some of these, like this, these two here, for example, on the left in the middle, that's a good size. You could maybe even consider going down one font size, but then you have this one here on the right that's tiny, even at 12 points. So that's why it's a visual thing. If it looks too small, it's too small. But again, this is a super simple thing to test and change. All right, so to wrap up, so recruiters, we're looking for candidates whose skills and experience, they match the requirements of the positions that we're trying to fill. So at the college level, focus on acquiring skills that easily convey to a work environment. So, technical, leadership, teamwork, work really hard at securing good engineering internships. Luckily, SHIP really helps out in that regard. They make it easy to connect with really good companies, really good internships. So work hard at getting good internships on your resume. Strong technical or leadership skills, they can overcome poor resume formatting. But everything else being equal, if we're comparing two candidates that on paper are pretty much the same, one has a really nice resume, one has kind of a crappy resume, the one with the best resume will be perceived as more qualified than the other. So that's why it's important. And finally, take advantage of resume review events at your school, through your career center, at conferences. Get multiple opinions. The more the more eyes you see, the more review cycles that your resume goes through, the more polished it's going to be. I've given you a lot of good hints and tips and rules of thumb here, but still, the more feedback you get, the more polished it's going to be. So, all right, that's the end of the presentation. Thank you for the opportunity to present today. It's been a pleasure. I think we have about 10 minutes left, so in that time, I would be happy to answer any questions.
Mario, we had a question. Luis Moreno asked, when printing the resume for the career fair, how many should we print out?
So the quantity depends on your strategy for the career fair, and how aggressive you plan on being. If you're trying to canvass the entire career fair and hand out dozens of resumes, then you're going to need a pretty decent stack of printed resumes. But if you have a more targeted strategy, which in my opinion is a better strategy, find the ones that you really want to talk to, and then calculate based on that. You probably want to add 25% at least to that list. You'll run into random people that you hand resumes to outside of the career fair. There'll be other opportunities to hand them out. So I would say have a strategy. Figure out how many companies you want to talk to, how many are aligned with your what you're looking for, what you want to work on, and then come ready. And yeah, definitely bring a few spares. Don't cut it too close.
Okay. We have another question. The question was, some companies use software to scan resumes looking for keywords to screen resumes. Do you have do you recommend doing any differently on the resume to successfully overcome the screening software?
Okay, yes, and that's a good question. So yes, and that software is called ATS, Applicant Tracking Systems. So some companies do use software. They take resumes, they scan them looking for keywords, to try to figure out who are candidates and meet their criteria, and who don't have the right keywords. So for that, going back to my earlier example about not using the paid templates from Etsy, Canva, etc., those templates tend to be way too fancy for that type of software. When you get into multi-column formats, in particular, it's very hard for that software to read those fancier templates. So simpler is better in that regard. And I would say the rest is just content. I mean, if you have list your experience, make sure you list the software that you've used. If you've used ANSYS, NX, MATLAB, whatever. Often those are the words that they're looking for. But yeah, I mean, beyond giving a good representation of yourself and your experience, the formatting would be really the big thing to make sure that it successfully makes it through those types of ATS screening software.
All right, thank you, Mario. One more question would be, if it's early on my college career and I don't have a lot of good technical content to put on my resume, how do you recommend I fill the space?
Okay, that's a good question also. So and we do see this in through SHIP. We have freshmen, sophomores going to the conference. They often haven't had time to have good internships to put on the resume, and they're struggling for content. So that's when we see a lot of lists of classes taken, lists of skills. But what I would say at that point is get involved. Work on your involvement with SHIP. Get involved in committees, get involved in the executive board, get involved in extracurricular activities. Get involved with any kind of technical club that your school offers. Be involved, show technical skill, show leadership, anything like that. And even within your classes, if you do like a team project where it's like a 4-person team and you had good results, you finished first or second or third, or in whatever you were competing on, or even if you can't quantify your results in that way, but you say, look, I worked in this team, I analyzed this, I worked on this, I developed this concept. All that is fair game for for an early career or an early college resume. You don't want to have too much white space. You want to put some content out there to give the recruiters, something to read. So anything like that is good. You can have the list of classes, you can have the list of skills if you want, but my advice would be get involved and think really hard about what you're doing in your classes, in team projects and, extracurricular activities, and take from that and, use it to build content for your resume. And as better content develops over time, if you get a good internship, start being more selective about what you list. Take out some of that, placeholder material and replace it with a better content.
All right. Thank you, Mario. I think we have one more. If I participate in a competition during the conference and I don't have time to incorporate the results into my resume before the fair, will the recruiters notice the badge add-ons from my competitors? Or what's the best way to make the recruiters be aware of I'm competing or won?
Okay. All right. So yeah, that's a good question. So I know at the SHIP conference, there's lots of competitions going on, papers, design competitions, etc. And they do give like badge add-ons to add saying I was in the, Nissan design competition, or, whoever is sponsoring it that particular year. So for my personal opinion, it's hard to keep track of what, all the badge add-ons. I mean, there's add-ons for so many different things. My recommendation would be that you have a good, elevator pitch, or, incorporate the results from that competition into your elevator pitch. That way, when you talk to a recruiter, you can be like, hey, I just participated in this, that I didn't have time to add the results to my resume, but we had really good results. We finished first or second, or, so when you talk to a recruiter, make them aware directly that you participated in that and that you had good results. When it's not obvious, when you don't have enough time to put it on your resume. So that would be my advice.
All right, thank you, Mario. One more will be Andrea asks, what would be good strategy to say that you know how to use Microsoft 365, Adobe, Salesforce, etc. on the resume? I had experience at internships and seeking a full-time position, and I just want to show it.
So again, the struggle with just a list of skills with no context is that we don't know your level of expertise. So if you want to show less skills, but use a little more space to explain your level of expertise. So you could say, I used, 365 for, to do this, or I use Salesforce for, blank, 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 say what you used it for. Give the recruiter some context about your level of expertise instead of just listing it. Because again, for us, it's really hard. Some people will list anything that they launched once and know, what it looks like. And some people do have a higher level of expertise in that software. And that's what we want to see. If we see a skill, we want to assume that you're good at it instead of that you're just a beginner. So that would be my advice. Less is more in that, in that case. So list less things, but explain more about your level of expertise.
Okay. I would also say sometimes I've been on interviews where is that they listed it and then you ask and then you realize, oh no, they shouldn't have listed. So yes. The other question from Watunyu, sorry if I mispronounced. Do you have any resume advice for STEM MBA student with an engineering background who shifted from operations to program manager? How should I show my skills?
Okay, so you may have some work experience under your belt in that case. In that case, I would say two things are important. Your education should be near the education section, should be near the top of the resume, so it's clear to recruiters that you have both a technical and a business degree. And that summary or profile or objective statement, super important in that case, because they'll see that you have two different degrees, but what are you really looking for in that case? So, what your current interest is, what you're looking for, what options you want to keep open, all that should be included in that summary statement. And that's where you make it clear that even though you have two degrees, your interest is really in one of them, or, help that recruiter, steer you in the right direction, or understand really what you're looking for in that case.
Thank you, Mario. So looks like on the chat, we might not have more questions.
Okay.
Does anyone have any further questions? Okay.
All right. Okay. If not, I'll wrap up with one final slide. So to wrap up, if you're attending the upcoming SHIP conference in Salt Lake City, please make sure to pre-register with Honeywell. Use this QR code on the left, as our recruiters are going to be screening candidates for interviews prior to the conference for internships and full-time positions. Also, if you're there in Salt Lake City, please make sure to visit us at Career Fair booth 1103. We're really close to the Career Fair entrance. And also, we're going to be hosting a hospitality suite the first night of the conference on Wednesday, November 1st from 7:30 to 9:30. So it's a no pressure, nice opportunity to talk to all our recruiters about, what we do, what we work on, why we're excited to work at Honeywell. So anyway, hope to see you there. If you're not attending the conference, please use this QR code on the right. Still register with us, create a profile, upload your resume, as our recruiters will also be looking at those resumes. So anyway, thank you. Have a great evening. It's been a pleasure to present to you today. And I hope to see many of you in Salt Lake City. Take care.
Please don't leave yet, so you can provide feedback for this session. I'm going to show the slide right now. Maria, if you can stop sharing, please.
Yes.
Okay, here's my screen.
You got it? Okay.
Okay, I know it's small, but if you can take your phones out and take a shot of can you see my screen, right?
Yes, it's in PowerPoint mode, but yes, we see it.
Yeah, I know. So if you can take your cameras out and make sure that you fill out the session evaluation, I'll appreciate it. I know Maria would like to know what a great presentation this was. So please fill out this survey so that you can win some great prizes. And I have all of your names and email addresses, and I will announce those tomorrow. Thank you. So I want to take this chance for the Honeywell team, and Mario, thank you very much for sharing with us your expertise. The Honeywell team for being a backup of, helping me with the chats and the questions. I so appreciate you, appreciate your time. And thank you for all the attendees that came here. I hope to see you tomorrow. I know the session is a little bit late, but those in the West Coast, maybe this is better for you. It's from 9 to 10. Thank you again to everybody. Appreciate you.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Yeah.
Thank you.